something you just said there was that we tend to define cool or potency relevance based on data primarily. Kylie Jenner, the most followed woman in the world, maybe is it Beyonce now, who knows?
Yeah.
I can't remember which one's at the top slot now, but that's data. It's all data driven. Where are the numbers moving towards? What's the TikTok algorithm doing? And so let's now talk a little bit about this sticky point. Cool has come from a background of never sell out, or if there's any business dealings to do with your artistry or your expression, you're cool in the world, never let it be seen. It has to be done by the gatekeepers, by the record producers, by the managers, behind the scenes. Bruce Springsteen is never talking about how much money he made off a record. That would be so on the nose. That would be completely off brand. So, but now we've seen a shift where, the economy has evolved, the zeitgeist has evolved, where now economics and cool are interlinked, intrinsically intertwined in many different ways. Where do you think we're heading towards? Where I'd love to hear your point of view on the economics of cool, the interface between cool as a concept and economic outcomes, how to do it well. Where would you start? I mean, these are big conversations, but where would you start? What are your thoughts?
I think, I'm going to try to do this succinctly. So I thought you were going to bring up, so there's this big new global study this year, right? That gave us the 6 adjectives that people think all over the world are the qualities of a cool person, right?
On an individual level, on a personal level versus a zeitgeist level.
Yes. What we're talking about, right? Yeah. But 13,000 informants, 20 countries, or 20,000 informants, 30, I don't know, but it's a global study, and they were shocked to find agreement on these 6, qualities, right? Autonomy and adventurous, and I'm blanking on, the 6 of them being open and extroverted, and there's like 2 others, right? So that's interesting because it means that this concept that we're exploring that shows up in the early 1940s in America is now a global concept that we mostly have some consensus on.
Yep,
and even though it doesn't mean the same thing it meant that way in terms of zeitgeist, there is real continuity that can be drawn, right? So that's important, right? The second thing I think that's important I'm very happy to say is that it is still actually kind of a grassroots trickle up phenomenon. Corporations still can never predict anything. What products going to be good, what's certainly not what music's going to sell, what actors or actresses are going to break through. They have no track record on predicting this. It is really a matter of a grassroots phenomenon, right? No one predicts Billie Eilish is going to be Billie Eilish. There's nothing about who that woman is that can be predicted. From my point of view.
Can we just unpack that a little bit, just for our audience, in case they're thinking a similar question? Like, Billie Eilish was believed in from a young age by the A&R because they saw something in her, because she did represent elements of talent, rebellion, aesthetically beautiful. You wouldn't say that is an example of people having a gut feel for what is coming next and what will be relevant? Hang on. Let me caveat that, Joel. It cannot be guaranteed. Maybe, I think that's what you're saying, right? We can have sensibilities, but it's all a play. It's all a gamble. No one can guarantee exactly what will line up with the zeitgeist. That's what you're saying.
They're in the business of finding someone like Billie Eilish. Yeah. That's true.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
But no one knows she's going to sell 10
Not
million.
Guaranteed. Exactly. There's never any guarantee. These are all punts. These are all gambles. Yeah. Cool.
It's like, look, there are movies that Hollywood thinks, there's going to be a huge movie.
Yeah.
And they fail. And there are movies that they think this is some little indie movie, right? And then it makes, $200 million, right? So I'm just saying that part of it is still interesting to me.
Totally. And the great humbling of cool. It is a deeply humbling concept. I'm always humble to the cool gods. They will tell me if it's the right thing at the right time. I don't actually know. Yeah.
It's one of the reasons when I have students tell me who's cool and why, and they name someone I hadn't heard of, I immediately look them up, right? It's like, obviously, something that I don't know.
There's something there. Yeah.
So there's that. I worry that one of the things that study is going to do is that advertising agencies all over the world are going to start putting in their ads actors and moments that are people who have those 6 qualities, because that's often how literal they can be, right?
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that's not true. But so I don't deal with the product end of things, right? Like what makes a product cool. I will say again, the reason why cool has life is a couple of the people, sociologists who did that study. They did a study about 15 years ago, and they were trying, and it was just on the word cool, right? And what it means. But they were trying to do qualities of a person. And they thought going in, their hypothesis was that it was going to be the popular kids. And that's who, and then they said in their article that we began to basically hear a different strain about a kind of contrarian figure, which we would call the rebel, right? And when asked, students would often name James Dean. But my point is, they went in thinking that cool meant the cool kids, right? Or the popular kids. And I'm very glad that they were good enough sociologists to follow the data.
It was a layer deeper, would you say?
Right, but I'm thinking, really, in 2010?
Yeah.
You didn't do enough homework on cool to know that kids were not going to choose that?
Sure.
So that's just sort of the disconnect that still exists. So much of what's being studied about cool at the moment is about capitalism and products and neuroscience and how the mind works and perceiving what you want to buy or the kind of person you want to be. And the humbling of cool, as you call it, which is a good phrase, is that is ultimately not predictable. And so, in fact, if you're consulting on cool, which I don't do at all for businesses, but if I was consulting on it, you could do a lot worse, right? Than do the famous Cool Hunt article by Malcolm Gladwell, right?
Yeah,
he followed these cool hunters, and basically what they would do is take these are the new models for Nike this year, and they would go almost always to Black and Latino neighborhoods in the United States. They would, and they would just basically put them on the floor and say, which ones do you like? And what they realized, the cool hunters, is that there was always a kid who had superior aesthetic sense. There was always a kid who put on a sneaker and went, these are the ones.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Like, that's who you're looking for.
Yeah.
Look for cool people. Do not look for cold products. It cannot be predicted.
Agree.
Right?
Because, Joel, would we say that you can have a literacy in the zeitgeist? You can have like the taste.
Absolutely.
Taste is a fluency. Taste is a dedication. Taste is both a natural gift as well as a honing. It's yeah.
This is
zeitgeist literacy. Why are we not learning more about how the zeitgeist works and how to get a feel for what's coming?
This is a great phrase because it applies both to the new cool icon and to their early adopters, right? So look, we both have friends, and you might have been this kind of person, right? And I might have been too, who understood when something showed up that this was a zeitgeist thing, right? This person, this thing, right? And, and for me, it was Springsteen very early when I was 16, turned on by a friend who had zeitgeist literacy. Like, he got there before me. And I said, well, who is he? He goes, just buy his records and listen, which is a perfect thing. I'm not going to tell you.
That is perfect, isn't it? Yeah. Right? You'll either feel it or you won't. You'll either resonate or you won't. That's it. There's no words that will do it. It's a feeling.
Right. So that's perfect, right? So that's where you are. So if you are actually a corporation or an advertising thing, really what you should do, and I know this is idealistic, is make the best product you can, because you have hired the best designers and engineers to say, make the best innovative sneakers for this year, whatever the product is, right? And then you could do a lot worse than do what they did. Go to a store, tell a bunch of young people in the store, I'll give a pair of sneakers to anybody who helps us out, choosing which are the best ones for now. What better kind of cool research is there? Find the cool people, ask them. Yeah. It's the best you can do with cool.
I love it. Therefore, do you think, and maybe this will be our final question, do you think you can develop your literacy in taste and cool?
So I do. But
I believe you can. I mean, this is part of my work, is teaching people the premise and the pillars of what cool actually is. Because Joel, and maybe just to add a bit of context, when I started doing Coolnomics, the first thing a lot of people said to me was, oh, are you going to come into our boardroom and tell us what's cool? And I was like, okay, first of all, That shows you don't know what cool actually is as a
That's
concept.
not how it works.
No, I'm going to teach you how to fish. I can't tell. I can do a trend report for you tomorrow. Sure, that's easy. I can tell you sell this, do that, but it's more about I'm interested in the literacy of it, the practice of resonance, I would say, maybe. But yeah, what do you think? Do you think it is?
Resonance is a great term, right? But to use their analogy, actually, you can't give them a fish. You can only teach them how to fish. Because to give them a fish would be to say, you're asking me what cool is, and I'm going to give it to you. You actually can't.
You
because
can't. Yes.
Whatever you told them would not work. It would just be a set of concepts that they would go, that's interesting. Yeah. You can only, in fact, teach them how to fish.
Yeah,
right?
Agree. Yeah. Yeah.
So look, but this thing about zeitgeist literacy, right? So what's happening with those artists and writers and musicians and all those people who embody cool, right? What's happening is that they are embodying the zeitgeist. They don't have to be conscious of it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I was told when I was very young that it's not that writers are people who have these invisible antenna, right? The great writers have invisible antenna, and the zeitgeist hits their antenna, and that's what they produce, right? But there are people, and let's, for lack of better terms, call them the early adopters, who resonate on that frequency. And they may not be artists, but they know.
Agree. Yep.
Right? And those are the people you're trying to find, right? Because they are very confident. Now, how do you work on it? Well, I have to say that the easiest way to do this is you have to study some form of art or music or code. You need to develop an aesthetic sense.
Yeah.
So if you don't have one naturally, and some people do, the way some people are talented in music, the way to do it is study any art. Doesn't matter what it is, because then you get a sense of movements and shape and line and how it works. And that can be applied pretty much across any sort of artistic horizon. So, and since corporations aren't going to do that, they need to hire you or somebody else.
Yeah, the cool kids, they get their Gen Z social media managers. But yeah, one of my suggestions is that we need the zeitgeist in the boardroom, not with the cool social media manager just running the Instagram. We need the zeitgeist in the, that seems obvious, but we should have the zeitgeist in the boardroom. Because in my corporate experiences, I haven't often seen the zeitgeist in the boardroom, and that is crazy to me.
Right.
It's
and
crazy.
my actual thing, even though social media is where sort of cool lives in the 21st century,
sure.
I still say cool is about co-presence. You have to be in its presence live to understand it. And so that's important. I have this story, and we'll probably wind up with this, because it's the best story ever. I mean, it's not the best story ever, but it's everything we're talking about, right?
Okay, love it. Yep.
So in 1999, I think it was, there was a video game company. I forget the name of the company. They had a new video game that was in beta, right? Hadn't been released yet. It's called Pox. It's a terrible name. And it was sort of literally about the name was good because it was not about a plague, but it was about that kind of, it was a game about viral spreading of something.
Oh, but like pox, that kind of pox. Yeah, wow, okay, potent. Yeah. All right, yeah.
But here, it's not important what the game was. Here's what they decided to do. They sent their marketers, and you couldn't do this anymore, in Chicago to schoolyards, public schoolyards.
Yeah.
And they asked kids between 8 and 13, who's the coolest kid you know? And so, they would ask Johnny, and Johnny would say Tom, and Tom would say, Malcolm, whatever it was, right? And they would stop when a kid said, me, right? Then they took all the kids who said me up to their corporate boardroom.
Yeah.
And said, we want you to beta test our video game.
Okay.
So, just research data, right? You're the focus group, right? And this is the group, right? 12 and 13-year-old boys.
Self-defined
right?
Cool. You can't define yourself as cool. I'm a bit caught on that.
No.
Keep going. That's wild to me. Yeah.
Right. But, that would catch you, right? But in general, we can come back to that. But leave it at the point that if there's a ladder of cool, and if somebody says, I'm the coolest guy I know, and he's already been vetted by 4 people, you can take him at his word, right?
Sure.
So they all beta test. And first of all, they find backdoor things that none of the designers knew.
Sure.
So they actually, they were basically being asked, do you like it? What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? And while they're playing it, they find all sorts of things that the designers did not intend, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is kind of a perfect parable of cool in real life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Find the cool people. They will be the best at your product. They will tell you how to make it better. And they're the ones you have to convince, because they're the early adopters. They're the people with aesthetic and zeitgeist literacy, right?
Sure, the tastemakers, the discerning, yeah.
Right. And this is schoolyards, public school kids, kids who don't know that they have aesthetic literacy, right? And so that
it's
makes
immediate. It's an immediate reaction.
more organic. It's more authentic, right?
Yeah, sure.
Like basically what those other kids are saying is, if that guy said that this is the video game to play right now, I would certainly be playing it.
Sure.
That's the message, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of, even though in retrospect, I go, how did anyone let marketers in the schoolyard? Like, how did that happen?
Sure. So I mean, they're the target market, though. It makes sense to me. Yeah. Wow.
They must have gotten special permission from the school. And they're probably guys dressed in suits, like, so it didn't look, sketchy.
Yeah.
But I look back at it and go, how did that happen? But I still think it's like a perfect story.
Yeah, right? Totally. And perhaps like the tastemaker scale, hey, like that there has to be a pinnacle of the person with the most discernment, the most excellence, the most awareness of originality, and also spirit of the time, zeitgeist literacy. Yeah, I think it's a fascinating area to consider as an area of practice of output and literacy and fluency and decision making.
Yeah, I just remember when I read that, if you asked me in the schoolyard when I was 12, I would have said Percy Williams. I knew who I thought was the coolest kid in the schoolyard.
Yeah.
So it was just a way of saying, this is a very good question. Because if you asked me, I would say him, and he would have been really a great person to beta test this thing for you.
Sure. Oh, I love it. A potent character with a clear point of view. Okay. Fantastic. Yeah. I think it's great for our audience to consider how to get the cool into the room, consider it as a practice, consider it as an area of fluency.
How do you find, the real challenge is, how do you find the cool people? It's not learning what is cool or being told what is cool by a consultant. It's like, that's your challenge. If you have a company, find the cool people that buy this product and then bring them in somehow. Yeah, give them free stuff, whatever.
For sure, the innovators of that space. Yeah, early adopter innovator. Yeah.
But otherwise, make the best product. Don't ask people what the good product is. That's your job.
Oh, and that's where the artistry comes in. We need to, and also, again, the humbling of the cool, that no, you have to think up something great through your own lens first. And then you take it to the market or the audience or the focus group, and you get feedback, and then you iterate it. But there's no way of getting around the fact that the origin of the idea must come from you, from the ether. And that is what the originality is. That's the authenticity. And I'm starting to think, Joel, that because I did my lecture last night on authenticity and credibility, the third principle in Coolnomics. And I'm now starting to think that I think the authentic part of cool that we talk about isn't about every part of the truth. It's at least one piece of truth that gets from a human to an external expression. Perhaps there's something true about it. I don't need to hear the whole story of that person, but there's something in them. Because when you were saying Muhammad Ali wasn't necessarily relatable, I'm starting to think, no, he was relatable on a fundamental human level of being a fighter and being unstoppable and being powerful. They are universal human values that I think translate across spheres.
Right. So in terms of that, in terms of Muhammad Ali, it's aspirational. You're saying, I want to be some of the things you are, right? But I don't need you to be relatable to me as a person, right? It's like you are. So one of the ways I define cool is that in a generational cool icons carve out new space that this generation needs. Artistic, aesthetic, emotional, that's what they do. So in the 20th century, those figures, we aspired to inhabit the space they carved for us, right? And in the 21st century, if it becomes too relatable, then we're not carving out big enough spaces. From my point of view, that's the danger.
Totally. Yeah, of course. Joel, thank you so much for joining me this evening, talking about this very specific topic that we're both so deeply engaged with. And this is, I think, the beginning of a long-term dialogue between you and I in terms of this particular topic, because there's so many layers to it. There's so many other things we could have talked about tonight. But thank you so much for joining me all the way from New Orleans and imparting your wisdom to our audience tonight. And I'd like to thank you on behalf of our audience, and I'll chat to you soon.
You're very welcome. This was fun.